Ja, een goedenavond. Welcome. Hello, everybody. H is for hemp. Now, because, especially tonight, H is for hemp. Because after many years of hard work, visiting 4 continents, 26 countries, and speaking to more than 200 people, really 200 people, and spending, believe it or not, 4 years living in her car, last March, so March 2022, Maren Krings, a German photographer and a storyteller, finished her book, and here is the book. 624 pages. Everything, really everything you always wanted to know about hemp, but were afraid to ask. Everything is in this book. And we have the great honor to have Maren here, but also a lot of other people give us presentation. We will watch some short videos. And after about, let's say, 1 hour and maybe 5 or 10 minutes, then there is room for you to ask some questions. And for people who are watching right now, live stream at home. So please go to menti.com. You go to menti.com and the code is 44634240. I repeat, go to menti.com, 44634240. Because, as I said, we are talking about hemp and maybe the possible contributing of hemp to tackling some of socio-economic problems, crises we have, and maybe contributing to a more sustainable future. So, having said that, now it's time to get a little bit of a history lesson. And I would like to ask Gebran Korefar, who is the curator of the Hash and Marijuana Hemp Museum in Amsterdam, to join us over there. And yes, big applause for Gebran. Yeah. Gebran, you will give us a couple of, about 5 minutes historical overview.
Yeah. Hemp history in 5 minutes.
Okay. Ga je gang, go your gang.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, welcome everybody. I'm glad you all made it here. Despite of the rain, it's good hemp weather today, Mark Reiners told me before this meeting. I work at a very small museum located in Amsterdam. It's called the Hash, Marijuana and Hemp Museum. It's a museum dedicated to the cannabis plants, to its many uses throughout the centuries. We are located in Amsterdam and in Barcelona, and we show the private collection of Ben Dronkers. And Ben Dronkers is a cannabis entrepreneur who started collecting everything about cannabis in the 70s. And this is, based on his collection, we display the history of hemp and of cannabis. But I won't be talking about our museum all the time. A few years ago, I met Maren. She came up to me and told me, hey, let's drink a coffee. And she told me all about her work, the research she did, the projects she documented, and the photos that she made. And we were going through these photos, and when looking at them, I thought, you know, this would be a very, very nice exhibition in our newly renovated gallery. So this is what we did. And last year, after some corona delays, we opened a small exhibition of some of the photos and some of the stories that she has been collecting in all those years. Hemp, one of the topics and one of the chapters in our book is called H is for history. History, and hemp has a lot of history. I was visiting family yesterday, and it's kind of hard to see. This is a map of the Netherlands. And somewhere near Rotterdam, like 1 hour south of Amsterdam, there's an area called the Alblasse Waard. And back in the 17th century, in the 18th century, local farmers used to grow hemp there. It was a way to make some extra money. Right next to the farms, they had small pieces of land. It was called a kenneptuin. It's in Dutch, it's an old-fashioned Dutch word, and now in English we would say a hemp garden. On these small plots of land, they grew some plants to make some ropes, maybe some textiles, but they also distributed these plants after harvest to a region north of Amsterdam, and this was the Zaanstreek. In the Zaanstreek there was a lively hemp industry because industrials there were making hemp cloth and hemp textiles to be used for the local shipping industry. So a couple of years ago, some local mill fans renovated a mill into an historic hemp beater. And a hemp beater was a mill that was mechanically driven by wind, of course, and by means of an interior the mill would run, it would lift up big beams, let them down on the hemp, and the hemp was broken and made softer, because what you needed was soft fibers to be able to process these into threads, and after threads, of course, canvas and textiles. In about the same time, this man, Rembert Dodoens, he published a book, a botanical, it's early 17th century. And in this book, he describes all the medicinal uses of plants known at the time. And of course, hemp was also in there. It's the fourth book, and he describes the uses, how it's grown, what kind of ailments it helps for, and kind of en passant on the side, he also mentions, well, hemp, it's grown everywhere, and they use it to make some ropes and to make some textiles, fine and coarse. And he really mentions it on the side, and that I think means that hemp was an everyday plant. And from everyday plants, everyday products were made. Like, for example, kites, clothing, ropes, fishnets, all kinds of materials. And this is an image from the mid-19th century, which shortly shows you some of the old products. But the hemp history is not only history about products, but also history about people. And that's what's so great about Maren's project. She highlights these people that start exploring the world of hemp. And I imagine this guy doing the same. He was living in the 30s in Italy. It's from a photo book that we have in our collection. It shows images from his factory. He grew hemp, and he was proud to be shown with his hemp plants. And this is again in the Alblasserwaard, I think in the 50s. These guys, well, judging on their haircuts, it's probably the 1950s, and they're inspecting freshly grown hemp plants. And this woman was in France in the late 19th century. She was harvesting hemp. She was pulling the hemp out of the soil, which was an enormous hard task, because hemp roots tend to go very deep into the ground. So pulling them out with bare hands must have been quite a task. And it's often women working with hemp. For example, here in Romania, where these women are breaking hemp, making the fibers softer, to be able to process them until they could be spun into threads. Like, for example, the woman on the left. She's from Brittany, and the woman on the right, that's a Dutch woman. It's early watercolor by no one else as Piet Mondriaan, who you might know from a bit different work, but we show this in our gallery in Amsterdam also. And after the threads, there was the weaving. And this fellow was weaving somewhere in the 17th century cloth to be used for the sail industry in the Netherlands. Well, I could go on and on here, of course, showing you thousands of images, but I won't, because this is all about Maren. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about the history of the plant in more than 5 minutes, please visit our museum. Or if you want to, you can also look at this book. This is what we published last year. It's called The Weed of Wonder. It's a book about the many uses of cannabis, hemp, not only industrial, but also medicinal and spiritual and psychoactive also, if you like. I would like to leave it with this. Thank you.
Thank you. I love your energy. Yeah, man. I love your energy. Just one question before I start a short video for 3 minutes. You told us, about your own job, you as a curator at the museum. If I may ask, do you have any, or did you have any personal link to the subject matter?
A personal link.
Well, you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I'm not stoned all day.
But
if that's the question.
Before you started to work on it.
Of course, I knew hemp, the recreational use of cannabis, but it was way back in the days. Yeah. And I really got into this topic because I think it's a fascinating story. It's one plant, and it touches upon so many different issues. Industrial history, social history, agricultural history, and we have nice things. We have over 9,000 objects, so it's a really interesting collection to work with. So it's more the collection in the museum that inspires me than getting high.
Okay. Thank you so much. You go back to the room, and I will call you on, let's say, about 25 minutes. So now we are going to watch a short video, 3 minutes, about Maren's journey, and after that I will have a conversation with her. So I would say, start the video.
In In December of 2019, a journey of 4 years in my car, driving almost 100,000 kilometers through the world, came to an end. I had made my car, a Volkswagen Caddy, into a rolling office, always at my disposition and a safe place for every night spent on my journey. I traveled to 26 countries, covering most of Europe, the USA, Russia, Central and East Asia, where I documented over 200 different projects and interviewed 80 hemp industry experts. I set out to do this because I was driven to find answers to the stifling question asked by scientists. How can we adapt our societies within a short time to live responsibly within the boundaries of our planet? Looking for an answer, I stumbled upon hemp. It cleans dirty soils and creates a so-called carbon negative in the atmosphere when turned into long-lasting products. Hemp is used to make food, textiles, medicine, building materials, and much more. In fact, during the early Western Han Dynasty, around 2000 years ago, the first paper was made from hemp. I wondered, can hemp mitigate the socio-ecological crisis?
My name is Maren Krings, and I'm a German documentary photographer, focusing on the social and the environmental impacts of the climate crisis.
Climate impact storytelling empowers me to visualize the complexity of this crisis, creating an emotional narrative from scientific data and real events. As a storyteller, I see my responsibility in searching and telling those stories that not only show the effects of environmental change, but also the practical solutions that people are coming up with across the globe. By focusing on solution-oriented journalism, I hope to empower those suffering from climate anxiety and spread widely the actions taken by individuals to counter the climate crisis. I documented entrepreneurs showing their success stories and transforming our common industries into more climate-conscious models. My book, H is for Hemp, is an encyclopedia of hemp, including expert interviews and photo documentaries based on Kate Raworth's donut economy. The visual and written explorations show how hemp impacts the dual conditions of social and environmental boundaries by eliminating the use of chemicals, reducing water and energy usage, and show how hemp products are capturing carbon dioxide in form of buildings and long-lasting biocomposites. Especially COVID-19 is making people around the world aware of the need to move into a circular economy that respects the limits of our planet. In other words, hemp can offer us a system reset. How? I will show in my book, accompanied by a traveling exhibition. It's time to give the grace and magnitude back to this plant that has nourished, sheltered, and protected mankind throughout history.
Now it's time to ask Maren to join us at the podium. So, Maren, the woman of the hour. Okay. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. You are standing over there because you might need the clicker to show us some pictures. So let's go back a little bit in time, and then yes. Okay, we go back, and then we will be here again, and maybe a little bit of looking forward. And just for people who just tuned in, if you want to ask a question, you know, people who are watching the live stream, please go to menti.com. If you go to the menti.com, it's very easy to ask a question. Go and the code is 44634240. I repeat, go to menti.com 44634240. So you told us about the starting of a journey, and you also mentioned COVID. But when you started your journey, there was no COVID. So why and how you, as a documentary photographer who was very interested in the current affairs, refugee crisis, why did you start a big journey about hemp? I didn't get that. Exactly.
Well, let's put it this way. I never really set out to do a journey on hemp. In fact, when I moved into my car, which you've heard the whole story about, so I'm going to spare repeating that again,
I was actually thinking that I would move into my car to get the flexibility and piddle paddle a little bit through Europe and get to know my own homelands a little bit better, because we were at a height of a refugee crisis and there were a lot of very radical opinions about it, and I just felt like I needed to understand better what was motivating people to either think they can send people back home or invite them in. And this was my initial thought. The only problem was it kept getting intersected by this plant. So, over months I was trying to get connected to an entry hook to my refugee story and ended up continuously documenting all these little tiny stories about hemp. And when I first found out about hemp, what struck me really a lot was the fact that you can do so many things with it. So I kind of started from that greenhorn perspective, thinking, oh, this plant can offer more than just getting high? That's surprising. So I dug deep into all of this and then realized, wait a minute, there's actually a real connection between my potential refugee story and the actual plant hemp, because hemp can feed, dress, and shelter people. So actually I was addressing all of these problems that, all and more, than that refugees are encountering when there must be a reason why people leave their homes. They're lacking work, they're lacking energy, they're lacking education, they're lacking a political voice. So basically, maybe there was a pretty intrinsic connection between these two topics, and that's eventually, after half a year, I decided, okay, I think I'm going to be living for a little bit longer in my car, because I do want to discover more what hemp can do for the humanitarian part, as well as for the planetary overshoot. So 4 years was the working of collecting stories, interviewing people. We've heard about that already. I'm not going to repeat it. And then also, it took me about 2 entire years to actually put the book together. So to get to that point where we had a finished index took literally the entire time of COVID, believe it or not. And I'm very, very happy to see a lot of my teammates that made this possible, my story doctor from Amsterdam, my lecturer and copy editor from Amsterdam, to be in our audience tonight. And that's also why there is such a strong connection to COVID, because, well, let's keep the political part out, but I would say to a certain part, COVID was a blessing for me. If I had not had this extreme lockdown, I would have never been able to finish this book. I would have never been forced to think that much, that long, and that hard. And it also gave me the opportunity to pretty much throw overboard 3 times the entire structure of the book. I'm mentioning this because eventually now we're looking at a structure on the, what's that, for you it's the right side? Yeah. And it shows the structure of Kate Raworth's donut economy, and that was actually the entire ground parameter for my book. So I kind of evaluated how can hemp address to keep or bring back people who are living in poverty to the human foundation of the sweet spot, or the sweet donut, and how can it actually bring back our planetary overshoots by mitigating some of them. Of course, hemp is not the silver bullet, and it's not going to fix all of our problems. But for me, it was quite interesting to be literally traveling through the whole world over 4 continents, and I had a very clear compass. That was just this one plant that literally led me from one country to the next. So what I want to do now is, if you agree, or I'm not sure if you would like to ask me some more questions before I go into the real effects.
Believe it or not, I have so many questions, for you. But it's your party. So go on.
Perfect. I would like to introduce, not in super detail, because I know we have a very wide and broad audience. There might be people who have not heard much about hemp, and I do know that we have a bunch of experts on the hemp topic that actually come from within the industry, so I'm going to try to not bore either one of these 2 groups. But I do want to focus on some of these points that are very valid for the mitigation of the climate crisis on hemp. So one of the really important ones is actually the building sector. The building sector can bring back a lot of carbon or of CO2 by binding about 90% more than it emits. And we're taking the full life cycle. We're taking the seeds being put in the ground, all the tractor hours, the harvesting, the building the house, which also involves a lot of machines, and still a hemp house built with hemp and lime will actually generate a 90% negative carbon structure. And it lasts really long. And if you decide you don't want your house anymore, which I hope you don't, then you could technically also crumble it up, put it on your flower beds, and see these flowers grow nicely. But hemp building structures also have a little bit more than just the carbon negative aspect. There's also a lot of research going on in very different geographies for earthquake safety, and we'll actually hear Alicia Fall talk later about a project especially in Haiti. So I'm pretty sure Alicia will give us some more information on that. One of my absolute favorite topics in the book is phytoremediation. We eat food. Food usually gets grown in soil, and we often wonder why we're living such unhealthy lives nowadays. Well, how can we not be, or let me ask that in the positive way, how can we stay healthy if we're eating food that comes from completely spoiled and contaminated soils? Now, I could go telling you a lot of stories, but I would actually advise you to look in the book later, because this project that's on this slide here is actually a project in South Africa where they're cleaning up the detrimental effects from gold mining by using hemp as, to clean up the uranium and also the leftover from gold mining, which is extremely dirty. And hemp is used to clean the soils, and they buddied up with a former nuclear program to actually use the liquidation process and dissect all the individual heavy metals and all of these individual parts, bring them back into the industry and leave no trace behind. So it's actually quite significant that we're preparing our soils again to have healthy food. And when I say heavy metals, there's obviously a lot of plants that can do sequestration of dirty stuff in the soil, to say it very broad. But hemp has the most broad capacity to actually take up most of the heavy metals, which really means all of our soils contain that, because the fallout through the air and the fallout from all the industries that we have is just humongous. I mean, you will probably realize when you leave a window open in your house and you leave for a holiday for 6 weeks, you come back, and if you put your finger over the floor, everything will be black. This is the stuff we're talking about. Textiles is another topic, and I have to mention this. I'm really proud that I'm literally from head to foot dressed in hemp, and the wonderful thing is that the designer of my suit is even here in our audience from Romania. So,
Wait a minute. Where is the designer of your suit? Would you please stand up? Okay, can we get a shot of him? He's over there. Please stand up. Please keep standing. So maybe we can have a shot of him, the guy, with long. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Please go on.
Yeah, Dionesu is placed in Romania, one of the last ones to really produce textiles in Europe. And those who are from the industry, they will know that textiles, especially hemp textiles in Europe, is sort of a non-existing thing, almost, except for this. But the thing is that China really invested about 40+ years into bringing up the textile industry on hemp. And what you see in the book is actually a whole chapter on textiles in China, which are very, very well developed. But most of our European textiles that we're doing from hemp are all imports from China, from the yarns and everything that's cloth. So while, oops, I'm sorry. Running a bit quick here. There we go. So while obviously China has so much more manpower, this is really the big difference between Europe and China, that hemp is the hardest and toughest plant fiber in the world, which also comes with a little drawback that you need a lot of machinery, and that machinery wears low pretty quickly. It's incredible what hemp can break. It can break solids, iron fixtures, it can break tractors. Anybody who's from the industry probably has a funny, not so funny for them, story to add here. So this is also one of the reasons why the hemp textiles are really a hard thing to do, especially when you've lost the entire textile industry, which has happened in Europe. Another topic, which for me is a bit of a pet peeve there, that's the paper topic. So this entire book is printed on hemp paper. It's 60% hemp and 40% cotton, so I'm really proud to say it's a completely tree-free book, and I will actually admit that it was a very long journey and a very difficult one to get to this. Because in the beginning, when I decided to make a book about the story, I thought, okay, well, walk the talk, I'll print it on hemp paper. And then I started researching where I could get my hands on hemp paper and figured out, oh, yeah, that doesn't look so very charming. So I got samples from China, from India, from all over the world. They were beautiful, don't get me wrong, but they were hand-pulled hemp papers that were just simply not usable for offset printing, not for inkjet printing. Like if I would have presented that to any printer, they would have been like, ah, you go screen printing in some print shop, but not with us.
Maren, I hate to interrupt. Still have 2 minutes to go.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
I will be quick.
Cool.
I have, I think, 2 more topics.
Cool.
But I will finish on this one. And so eventually a German paper company stepped up and said, we'll develop a paper for you so you can print your book on that hemp paper. And that's basically what this is. I will skip this. It's also in the book, but we see that non-forest derived papers are literally at like 3%. That's the part that you literally do not see on this chart, and that's why we're really having a problem to keep alive our forests worldwide. And they are definitely used for something else than paper, or should be used. Another thing, and I think that will also lead us into the panel discussion afterwards, is the political voice, which there's a lot of other things in the political voice chapter, but one that I want to point out is the European Green Deal. And I'll end on this. If the European Green Deal, and I do hope that some of these people will be watching us tonight, if they were to have the courage and actually look at the hemp industry and the many things the hemp industry does, carbon sequestration, long-lasting products, more sustainable fabricated, they would probably have at least 4 of the points on their list to check off because they would be getting done. Right now, we're really falling behind to meet the European Green Deal in implementation. And while I could give more examples, but I think I'll end here. There's plastics made from it. As said, all of these things are in the book. So if you're interested in what all hemp can do, I think have a look in the book, maybe get your own copy. And I will hand back over to you, and maybe we can start the panel discussion. I'm just going to run through those last ones here.
Please, now please stay with us just for a couple of, we have room for 2 questions. First of all, very important for us, tonight, are we going to have a book sale and signing session afterwards, yeah?
Yes, the books are going to be available at the back table right there, or, of course, that would be much nicer if you join us afterwards for a little bit more of hemp conversation, networking, and general mingling. Yeah. And then we have a bigger book table in the, I'll say, bar, restaurant area. Yeah. And the books are already signed and numbered because it's a limited edition.
Limited edition,
so
yeah.
You have the option of me writing your name in there.
Yeah, and we have a special price tonight, 145 euros, I guess?
Well, the special price would be 140 for tonight.
440, okay. Dutch people, we love, discounts. Believe it or not. So, 140 euro. Nou, yeah, okay. And another question is, you met a lot of people, we talk about 200 people, I know it's very difficult, to pick 1 or 2 of them, but which project or which people, make the greatest impression on you, impact on you, maybe you didn't have no idea about their expertise, you were like surprised. Could you please tell us something about, because especially something like you, I'm just curious about that.
It's, of course, very difficult to answer that question because there were so many surprising people, and I would cut short on anybody if I focus on just one person. But I want to keep it local. We've talked a lot about the international scene now, and I actually want to zoom back into Amsterdam. The first time I came to Amsterdam and I met Gerbrand and also David from Sensi Seed Hemp Museum, the amazing thing to me was that I found things out there, especially also in the cannabis college,
that were completely new to me. I had already, dribbled on for about a year in the hemp industry, and I didn't know that the front door of a coffee shop is legal while the back door is illegal, and that hemp or cannabis by no means in the Netherlands is just legalized, as we foreigners all like to think.
Yeah, and you probably, by the way, you explained that in a very clear, cut and clear, way in the chapter D is for drugs. And you just mentioned how it works in Holland, about the limitation, this restriction. I really love that, to explain that to other people. Thank you so much for that. Having said that, in about, let's say 50 minutes, we will have a panel conversation here. And that will take about, let's say, half an hour. And after that, you can ask a question. And as I told the people who are watching this through the stream, you can send a question via menti.com. On that note, Maren, congratulations with your great journey, great result, and I will see you, let's say, in 50 minutes. You go back to the room. Thank you. And I can see that already some questions are coming. Please keep sending the question to us. And as I said, about 21:05, 21:10, we will give the question to other people. On that note, Alicia Fall, would you please join me here, over there? Alicia Fall, yes. Osio?
Did you say Osio?
I said Osio.
Osio, Doijo. That's impressive. He's speaking right now in Salagi, the Cherokee language.
I had the time, to look you up, and I was so glad with everything you have done till now, educator, performing artist, and for us, very special tonight, co-founder of Her Many Voices. You will give us a presentation, let's say, about 8, 9 minutes, and after that, maybe Maren and we can ask a couple of questions. And on that note, I will say, Geli Eli Cha.
Aha. Galile, ka. Yeah, thank you. Wado. All right, everybody. This is a treat. I get to sit here or stand here because of Maren. That's a gift. That's an absolute gift. And talk about hemp and humanity. So, my name is Alicia Fall. I am Eastern Band Salagi, which is Cherokee, and Cuban Taino, and a whole mixed bag of other things, including Dutch. And I am the founder and vision holder of Her Many Voices Foundation. We're a nonprofit based out of the States, and we started in 2009. Our core value is whatever I do for another, I do for myself. Our mission is to help you move your passions to purpose for the betterment of women, children, and Mother Earth. And one of the ways we're doing that is in using industrial hemp to advance sustainable agricultural practices and train BIPOC communities. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color communities to participate in the hemp industry. And we're doing this to address climate issues while addressing social, political, and economic equity in the industry. There are a couple of reasons why I started on this path. One is every minute we are destroying over 50,000 trees on this planet. Think about that. At the end of this hour presentation, we will have destroyed over 3 million trees. This is part of that man-made climate crisis, right? And as an indigenous person, I can tell you, we might be 5% of the population, but we are taking on the responsibility of 80% of the land. The other reason why I started on this path is because 1.3 billion people live in multidimensional poverty, and over 800 million of them are women and children. Multidimensional poverty covers a wide range of deprivations. So our focus is food security and shelter. The top left corner there, we're in Haiti, and in the bottom We're in Denver, Colorado. This was a hemp structure I helped to build. Being in Haiti, I was overwhelmed by the fact that the majority of the women that we work with live in these structures. Teresa has raised 11 children in this home. And when we met, all I kept thinking is, we can do better. We should do better, and we can do better. So we need to. There is no reason in the world why anyone should live in this kind of environment when this is available. Beautiful hempcrete structures. Now, I think at this point, I've got a little video that's going to come up. It's going to show all of those things that we're doing with her many voices, hemp, and climate issues. This is Earth. Home sweet home. We at Her Many Voices Foundation live here. The rest of you are somewhere around here too. Since we share the same mother, guess that makes us siblings. Let's put a pin in that thought. Isn't she beautiful? You know, she's 4.5 billion years old, 22,500 times older than humans, but you should have seen her back in the day. The power of her climate change could not be rivaled. Drama had nothing on Mother Earth. And then humans showed up. For thousands of years, it was all good. We went with the flow, walked in balance. We were one with nature, until we decided we knew better than her. Now let's just say humans' evolutionary changes have been putting a strain on dear Mother. You know the future depends on her, right? When she thrives, we thrive. When she doesn't, well, you get the picture. But at Her Many Voices, they believe that whatever I do for another, I do for myself. Mother Earth knows this well, and being the mom that she is, she's given us exactly what we need to take care of ourselves while taking care of her. One of the things she's left us is this little powerhouse plant right here. That would be me. My name is Hemp. Yeah, I know I don't look like much, but given the opportunity, I'll show you exactly how much I can do. The folks at Her Many Voices get me and have been reintroducing me into communities. What can I say? I'm a very environmentally friendly plant. They're providing trainings on how you can best partner with me to make a better world. You wouldn't believe what they've been able to use me for. Together, we're feeding people, housing people, and helping animals, all while taking care of our home. I grow in just about every climate, and I'm ready to go in about 3 months. I remove toxins from the ground, replenish the soil with nitrogen and nutrients, help control soil erosion, absorb carbon from the air, and put it back into the earth. I've even helped bring back bees in certain areas. And unlike cotton, I don't need fertilizers, pesticides, or herbicides. Did you know they cause air and water pollution? So join us at Her Many Voices and help us address climate change by planting educational seeds as well as more hemp seeds in the ground. Mother Earth literally means the world to us. Time to let her know. So just a short video of some of the work that we've been doing and the reasons why. Now moving forward, we are now focused on a hemp longhouse community. And for those of you who are not familiar with what a longhouse is, this is based on the Salagi, the Cherokee peoples. It's a template. This is a dwelling where multiple families come together, they work together, they tend to the children, they tend to the land, and they educate and they tend to Mother Nature's needs. So we're using this as a template, and this pilot program is going to be in the upstate New York area. The focus is to educate BIPOC women in particular, and this is everything from seed to end product. This is my team. The 2 young women on the left-hand side are my daughters, Shanoa and Melissa. These are the folks who are working with us already. These are the businesses and the organizations. And this is Lila Watson. She's an indigenous Maori elder. This quote speaks to the very core of me. She says, if you're coming here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you're coming because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. I know for a fact that my liberation is bound up with each and every one of you. It has to be. So let us work together. Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation and being with us. May I ask Maren, would you please join us over there, please? So we can have some questions if you have. Yeah, you will, yes, please stay over there. Yes, Maren here, yes, here next to me. Yeah. Okay, Maren, do you have any questions or any, would you like to reflect on what Alicia just said?
Well, I'm always a little bit left speechless after your presentations, and I have seen it, we've traveled together for almost 5 weeks now through a bunch of countries, and it's just very, very touching because what Alicia does is really putting together these two sides of the hemp industry. We have the side that comes from the technical knowledge, experts, scientists, builders, farmers that do phenomenal things. And then Alicia kind of puts that little bit of human touch to it, the connecting the two sides, and that's yeah, that's what I find very touching. Yeah. So that's not really a question, but Alicia, I do have a very specific question for you because I mentioned the hempstone being, or the hempcrete, hemp blocks being used also for earthquake safety.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's a core value in your project.
Yeah, that was really the inspiration in starting this, this path, because being down in Haiti, as many of you probably know, in 2010 there was a massive earthquake, and well over 300 people lost their lives. And I was on the ground just a couple of weeks after that. And all I kept thinking is, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I'm this lone little person here. And so coming back, that was my focus. And then fast forward a couple of years later, I'm hearing all about hempcrete. First, it was the release of, it was the ability to have marijuana as legal in Colorado. And then the focus was on the hemp and the hempcrete. And I kept thinking, like this woman, Teresa, these are the homes that these people live in. Now, fortunately, with that home, it shakes. It's not going to kill anybody. But the majority of the people in Port-au-Prince who lost their lives, it was because they shortchanged the concrete that they use. And so there was no movement. It just crumbled. So there we stood on the bodies of many, many, many people, the loved ones of many people. And this is a way to make a difference because hempcrete does have the benefit of being earthquake resistant. And truly, if this crumbles, as many of you know, we're now talking about massive slabs that just come down on people. So there's a tremendous amount of benefit in working with this plant, that's for sure.
By the way, just one question. Do you work together? Or have you worked together?
So
why are you laughing?
Well, yeah, it seems like we're moving forward in that direction. We've been traveling for a number of weeks together, that's for sure. And you know, I was surprised because Maren contacted me to interview for this book, and I thought, why are you interviewing me? I don't grow hemp, I don't sell, I don't do a lot of things, you know, but I talk about hemp and humanity. And that's how we got started. I think our very first conversation, we were online, a Zoom call, and we ended up spending 3-4 hours together on that call. We've been tied at the hip ever since.
Yeah, okay. So just to, you know, so you don't work together?
Well, I think we can put that down pretty clearly. Now we do.
Yes, we're in parallel worlds, yes.
Okay, cool. So now it's time to ask 2 other people to the podium and then have a conversation via the Zoom with Mark. So I would like to ask Marielle Edsets and Jasper van der Menkov to join us over there. Would you please? En ja, jullie krijgen applaus. Ja, ga daar staan, ja. And if you please move one, yes, over there, yes, so then I can join you here. Thank you. Okay, and now we are going to have Mark Reinders. Mark Reinders is on in the Zoom. Mark Reinders. Mark, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clearly. Can you hear me too?
Yes, great. Mark, you are the CEO of Hempflex, the largest privately owned hemp company in Europe. Am I right?
That's correctly, yes.
Okay, cool. We will show some pictures of the video you have made about your company on the background. And while we are showing that, I would like to ask you a couple of questions. When, and please tell us how your link started with the subject matter, with hemp.
Oh, actually, it's my father to blame for that one. My father is a farmer in the region of the Oude Pekela. And he was one of the first farmers who started farming hemp in 1998. And I was still going to high school at that time, but I was immediately impressed by the crop. And maybe not for the right reasons at that time. Because it was growing so fast, it was growing faster than weeds. So I didn't have to go out in my holiday in the field to remove the weeds. Something I had to do in the sugar beets. So that was I fall in love with the hemp crop. But if you get older, I start doing my studies at the agricultural school. I had to do an internship, and I decided to do my internship at Hempflex in 2001. Because I got curious what happens with these big bales of hemp straw when it left our farm. And in those 6 months in 2001, I did my internship. I really saw the industrial possibilities of hemp. Because at that time, I only know about hemp, the industrial possibilities. And I learned a lot. After my internship, I continued doing more studies. I worked a few years in the potato business, and I worked in the recycling business for 4 years. And while working in the recycling business, I had the feeling we were doing the right thing because we were trying to solve a problem by recycling waste. But the longer I get more the feeling that if you really want to do something about this problem, we have to start at the beginning of the supply chain and not at the end. And with that vision, I returned back in 2008 to Hempflex, and since then I never left.
Would you please, because we just saw a couple of, let's say, names of the things you produce, but if I ask you, on a rainy day, walking in Amsterdam, what do you do, as a matter of fact, at this Hempflex of yours? What would you say?
Oh, no, I think the evening is too short to mention everything we do with it. I always say that the biggest advantage of hemp is in the same time its biggest disadvantage, because it's such a multifunctional crop. And imagine, we are supplying fibers to the automotive industry for door panels. We are making insulation materials for houses. We are supplying bedding for animals, horticultural mats for herbs and sprouts. And at the same time, we're also supplying CBD as a food supplement and raw material for even medicine. So it's such a wide variety, all coming from one crop. And actually, I'm trying to explain to people is that normally you have a factory, a car manufacturing factory. Yeah, you have 10,000 parts, all come together, and at the end of the day, you have a car, one product. We are an upside-down factory. We have one raw material called hemp, and we take everything apart, and we end up with 10,000 products at the end of the day, and we have to sell them wherever you can. So that's why we're active.
Wow, Mark, that was quite a pitch. Yeah. Ik ben verkocht. It was very good, very good. Yeah. Okay, now, by the way, you will stay with us, on the background. So if you want to ask someone something or add something, or if there are any questions for him, I will give you the floor. Just wave to me, and I will give you the floor. On that note, now go to the stage. Marielle. Marielle is co-founder of Green Inclusive. And again, now we are watching some videos on the background of your initiative, of your company. What's your pitch? What's Green Inclusive?
Yeah, Green Inclusive is actually a partner of Hemplex as well, so we work together. We're focused on the north of the Netherlands as well, mostly in Friesland. I'm actually an organic farmer as well and a sustainability advisor, so I have my own hemp growing as well, so it's actually this big right now. You see some images and footage of, well, this spring, how you put the seeds in the ground and so on. We're trying to cooperate as well with municipalities and other builders to actually stimulate them using the building materials. And we're at the same time cooperating with Hemplex as well for the carbon credits, so that you can actually, get some funding out of the fact that you're, yes, sequestering carbon. So that's what we are working on together. And if we continue with the video as well, here you see a little bit of moving footage of the hemp that's, I think, 2 meters high here. And it actually grows to 3.5 to 4 meters. So it's really, really, I'm tall, but hemp is twice as tall as me.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's a really interesting plant, especially also if you take a look at the soil, what we talked about already. It's good for the soil as the roots go down deeply. And what you see on the video right now is actually the harvesting process, which is a huge machine, but it does the job really quickly as well.
Yeah, cool. But you know, on a personal note, you know, when I asked the question to Gerbrand and Mark, you know, they said they blame it to their father. You know, they had like a daddy issue. You know, we started it because of my father. You know. If I may ask you the same question, do you have any personal link/fascination for hemp?
Yeah, I definitely.
From the good old days?
Yeah, well, partly, but I only discovered that later on. The first introduction for me to hemp was actually multiple books that I read about climate change and the solutions, like Drawdown with the 100 best solutions to fight climate change.
Yeah.
But actually I found out that my father as well was one of the first growers in Groningen that actually reintroduced hemp after it was illegal to grow it. So it was really funny that I actually 30, 40 years later reintroduced it on our fields, and
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now we go to Jasper. Jasper, I guess I can skip that question about the personal link, because probably all Dutch people, it's just a matter of upbringing. It's a matter of your personal education at home that you get in touch with hemp.
I think I was one of the only ones in my youth who didn't use it, but it's but obviously know a lot about it.
Okay, Jasper van der Menkov, co-founder of the New Bodem and initiator of the energy and materials transition. What does it mean in a layman, language? What do you do? What is the New Bodem, and especially your link with hemp?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, I'm a transition specialist. If you look at society, we have a lot of these kind of great solutions which don't get institutionalized. We just don't use them enough, not quick enough, etc. So what I used to do in the last 15 years is to get society to adopt a complete new way of retrofitting homes to net zero. And from that practice, I kind of became a practitioner in societal change. To get different sectors who are working on the same topic in a completely different way than they should do, to get them to work in a kind of beneficial way on the stuff they do. So I just initiated a program which is called Building Balance, which looks at agriculture products and turning them into bio-based materials. Now, this is one of the quickest way to kind of store carbon in a way which is actually giving us something to live in. And that's what Building Balance is, and that's what we just started it, so I can't show videos of the results we have. But the idea is that we scale this in the Netherlands first, and typically hemp is one of these products which really fits well in this whole turnover of as well the agriculture sector to rebuild ecosystems, rebuild biodiversity, to overcome overnutrification, to get an industry running which actually produces those materials at a scale that it becomes cheap enough to then get bio-based building materials, in which the building sector then doesn't use any carbon anymore by cement and all kinds of bricks, but uses material which actually store carbon for a long time on these buildings.
Cool, cool. But by the way, are we talking about, you just mentioned that, both of you, Alicia and Maren, about a rediscovery of hemp. Am I right? Because it has been with us, for a long time, and also Gebran gave during his presentation about the rediscovery. Do you have any idea? That's a question for all of you, but maybe also for Mark. How come that we rediscovered this plant? What was yes?
Well, at least in the States, it was taken from us. We use this plant for thousands of years, indigenous peoples and further, right? Farmers, you were required to grow hemp on your field, a certain portion of your field. You could pay taxes with it. There's an endless list of things we used hemp for. And in 1937, that changed because we had someone who was the head of the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics at the time, Harry Anslinger, and he decided that for racially and political control reasons, to start spreading lies. He talked about when darkies smoke marijuana, they think they're as good as white men. When our white women smoke this, they listen to jazz music and they run off with black men. When our derelict Mexicans, he went down the list, and the American population drank the Kool-Aid. Hemp then, well, the cannabis plant became illegal. There were certain aspects that could be grown, but that was for the military. And then in 1970, there was a complete formal ban on all hemp products. That was President Richard Nixon signed that into law. So it was something that was taken from us, and then it destroyed the farmers. It destroyed predominantly the BIPOC community, the Black, Indigenous, people of color community, because many, many people were arrested for the use of this plant.
Yeah.
So we're claiming it. We're bringing it back.
By the way, you mentioned President Nixon and one of his advisors, and I guess it was in your book as well. Am I right? Yeah. Could you please tell us something about that during the 70s, I guess, yeah. Why they, 60s, 70s, why they started to give it a negative connotation and criminalize that?
Well, I will just basically build on what Alicia just said, which was the ban on cannabis, which eventually was just made hemp everything. And that also spilled over to Europe because Anslinger, the person who Alicia mentioned, he was then also commissioned or called to duty for the UN. Mm-hmm. And therefore, this whole thing just became viral and literally went through the whole world, which also meant that Europe also stopped growing hemp in most places. It wasn't as strict of a ban. So, for example, France kind of excluded themselves because they were contra anything that came from the United States. Good for them in that moment. Mm-hmm. Because they actually decided that because the United States said don't grow it, they just continued, which was also the rediscovery. A long time, we all looked down to France because they still had the cooperatives growing most hemp. Right now, a lot of the raw material comes either from France or, thanks to Mark, also from the Netherlands. So, the power dynamics are changing, but never forget what that does when you literally have 80 years of just erasing something from the knowledge of the human being. Yeah. We forgot how to do textile with it. We forgot how to build the machines to decorticate hemp, to post-process hemp. So this is one of the things, we're having a modern industry that's just having to be built up from scratch.
Yeah. Just one final question from my side, and then there is room for you to ask some questions. Please stand up, because it's nice for people at home to see you when you stand up. And I will come to you with a microphone. And as I said, people at home. I have just one question, most probably for you And maybe for Mark, when you are talking about the transition to use hemp for materials, will the future will bring more hemp production? And what is holding us down? Why don't we do that? And what might help to use it more for other materials? I guess I asked probably at least 4 questions. So very.
I have an answer, at least part of an answer.
And Mark, I will keep an eye on you as well. So if you want to add something, just raise your hand. So let's start with you, Maria.
Yeah, for now, if you focus, for example, on building materials, it's actually that the building materials that are most polluting, you actually don't pay for the pollution. So those are certain externalities. So for example, you have certain insulation materials that are way, way, way worse than hemp, but they're actually cheaper. Yeah. And that's also what you see in the building industry. The builders rather use something that's cheaper, and the client really doesn't know, doesn't ask. So that's really a thing that we're focusing on. We're going to try to make sure that they, for example, the municipalities say, okay, use bio-based materials, at least for 10, 20, 30% of the houses that you build or the houses that you, for example, put a new roof on, like I did. I used hemp in my own house, but it's not standard. I really had to find someone that actually wanted to do it.
Yeah. By the way, so the same question, for Mark, would you like to add something to this?
It's indeed, it is completely correct what Marielle is saying, that there's an unequal level of playing field. For example, in the Netherlands, if you're having more than 10 million kilowatt-hour energy use on the yearly base, you're exempted from paying energy taxes. We at Hempflex are using at the moment 2 million, small, surely 1.9 megawatt, but 1.9 million kilowatt hours of energy. So we are not exempted from paying energy taxes. So we are paying energy taxes while we are using less energy than a high consumer. So that's technically wrong because you're incentivizing energy use in this way. And we are, of course, that's not, now with a high energy cost, the price difference between a mineral insulation like glass wool or rock wool and hemp is getting smaller because for the production of 1 cubic meter of glass wool insulation, you need 10 times more energy than for the production of 1 cubic meter of hemp insulation. Think about that, because glass wool insulation, say, we're sustainable because it's made from recycled glass. Yeah. But you can imagine that between an empty wine bottle and an insulation mat, there's 1,500 degrees Celsius temperature needed to melt the glass to make the fibers from glass to make insulation.
Yeah,
so
great.
This energy crisis is helping, let's say, our type of products.
Yeah. Jasper, final note for you, and as I said, then we go to whether you see other questions from the audience.
Yeah, so I obviously think it's extremely frustrating if you see that solutions can be so much better and they're not coming. And just to give a bit of a picture of what you're building is a new industry. And we have an existing industry which probably has innovated for 50, maybe 100 years to get where they are. They got all their rules institutionalized by the government, and banks understand what these guys are doing. So if you want to intervene in that, you shouldn't just look at one crop. You shouldn't just look at one of the pieces of that puzzle, which is in agriculture and processing industry and in building sector or in textile sector. You have to look at the whole thing. And changing 3 sectors at a time while convincing a bank to do something different and convincing the government to change a law, that's quite a thing to do. And the reason all these industries keep on being stuck in the past is because that is institutionalized and it's a really hard lobby against you. Now, there is a way to change this, and that's just by guiding all these actors in that value chain together, building scale in that value chain and getting the laws changed. And so it is possible. But the reason it's not happening is because it's so complicated to get it changed.
Yeah, just imagine the rock wool lobby. That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, it's not even rock wool. It's like the 5 biggest players. They set up a whole organization in Europe. It's called EUREMA, which is just all the power using glass wool and stone wool industry, and they are just so close to all the big people there. So it's really hard to get that changed. But it's still not impossible.
Okay, cool. As I said, people who are watching this program right now via the stream, go to menti.com and enter 44634240. And we already have some questions coming to my tablet. And it would be great if you, especially for you to address your question to one of the panel members. That's a question for Maren. Do you work together or do you have contact with the European Industrial Hemp Association?
I do. In fact, the European Industrial Hemp Association is also covered in the book. Obviously, they do amazing work because they're our European frontline ship in fighting for the rights for hemp and everything. I visited their former lobbyist, now managing director in Brussels to actually understand what's happening there. So this is definitely also covered in the Political Voice chapter.
Yeah, please raise your hand because I have another question, then I can see the hands in the room. That's a question for the panel. So, as I said, please try to address your question to one of the members of panel. Since hemp is growing so fast, how much fertilizers, nitrogen, for example, etc., does it need in comparison to other plants? Is it possible to grow it on an industrial scale without chemical fertilizers? So who is going to answer this question? I don't know why, but I'm looking at Mark. But if you...
we have a hemp farmer in the middle of us.
Yes, well. Marielle, take it away.
Yeah, you use no chemical fertilizers, so you can just use animal manure, so to say. Yeah. And I'm actually convinced that you could probably also use more regenerative practices as well.
What do you mean by that?
That you add certain microbes to the soil, so you actually use more of or make it plant available to the hemp plant. That is actually already in your soil, because in the Netherlands we have a lot of things in the soil already present due to years of fertilizing it, so to say. So yeah, without any chemical things you can grow hemp, yes.
Okay, and the other question, so if you compare it with other plants, so you don't even have to compare it because you say you don't need use to chemical fertilizers. Am I right?
Yeah, I can answer this easily. I think a lot of farmers in the Netherlands still use chemical fertilizers.
For hemp?
No, not for hemp.
Okay. In general?
No, in general.
Okay.
So in general, I would say you're better off with hemp as well.
Okay, please stand up, and so Arno will come to you, and he will hold the microphone, because when it comes to questions. Please, for whom?
Okay, I think that my question is to Mark Reinders. But before I go to my question, I would just like to tell one little thing, something that I start to call the Dutch paradox, because I heard Maren talk about the front and back door of the coffee shops. Yeah. We see exactly sort of the same thing when it's about industrial hemp. Because we can grow industrial hemp, however, the flowers of this legally grown clump are illegal parts. And we can't grow for the seeds unless we can prove that the seeds are used to grow fiber. We can't grow them for consumption or industrial purposes. It's absolutely insane, very old-fashioned policy. Last week, and I return to Mark, last week we heard to me, quite shocking news that our policies will change even further when it's about industrial hemp. Because we learned that our government is now going to review the beautiful thing that we have for the farmers to get this extra subsidized, right, of €150 per acre for growing hemp, but probably it will be taken away from us, and also policy will change in such a way that the farmers are now forced, or will be forced, potentially, to have all their hemp removed from the fields before October 1st. And this is very crazy.
I don't see any question mark.
Maybe it's me.
Maybe it's me.
Yeah,
how can we fast forward to change these policies? What is your opinion on this potential change of policy?
Okay, great. That was a question, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah. It's true. In the current agricultural policy, where the farmers get subsidy, there are pillars for producing and are pillars for eco work, let's say it like that. And hemp, till this is the last year, is considered like an eco-friendly crop, and farmers get extra money in the pillar if they grow hemp, or they do nothing with the field, but hemp is being considered an eco-friendly crop. In the new proposals from the new agricultural policy, it's not the case anymore. Let's say hemp is forgotten in this new system, which is a shame. And we are working on the EU level together with Lorenza from the IHA to get this changed, but also on national level, because the European Union is doing a part of the agricultural policy, but also the countries have a part to individualize. And the Netherlands indeed are not really forerunning in this thing, if you compare to other countries. For example, in Romania, we're still getting subsidy to grow hemp in Romania.
Okay. Okay, you made your point, yeah. By the way, there is a question about, no, you mentioned a little bit maybe, but, and you, Maren, too, but nevertheless, a question. Donut economy model and the future of hemp, and how is the plant being used to bring humanity back into the sweet spot of the donut on the social foundation as well as the planetary overshoot?
Well, I always smile when I listen to the donut economy because I think it's going back to tribal ways. You know, for me, that's all this donut economy is. Yeah. You know, we talk about all these things that seem like new ideas, and they're very old ideas. Yeah. Maren's probably best to answer. I know that you have spent a lot of time around Kate, and you
well,
can answer
unfortunately,
this.
not personally around Kate, but
Kate
I wish you would have joined us tonight.
Would you like to? So we know it has been around for a long time. Now we call it donut economy. Would you like to add something? Because you probably, I assume you didn't know about it. Was a very old, in her opinion, very old system. Could you please add something to this?
I think even Kate Raworth mentions in her donut economy model that this is, you know, by no means any rocket new science, but it's basically coming back to finding the sweet spot for the planet and also for us humans to live together in harmony and not in the contrary. So in the book, you know, it's built up as an encyclopedia, so each one of these chapters actually addresses one of these, you know, points that Kate Raworth makes in her donut economy, because I did ask myself the question, if we all always talk about hemp being so amazing in mitigating the climate crisis, what does it really do to each one of these points? Mm-hmm. But that would definitely burst the evening if I would try to answer that.
Yeah.
So.
There is a question over there, so please stand up here. Oh, over here. So, excuse me, over here, yeah. To whom? And
I have a question to Maren, actually. My name is Tijmen Groot. I'm a student, master's student at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. About 1.5 years ago, I've embarked on a very interesting research on hemp in the Netherlands, together with René Sauveur and Nienke from Blue City Rotterdam Innovation Hub. And in that study we have looked at large-scale and small-scale hemp production in the Netherlands and what its potential is, and also what its biggest challenges are and bottlenecks. And there are a couple, which we haven't touched on here, and there's no time for that. But my question is to Maren, could you tell us a little bit about scale of the projects you visited within the different countries you have done your research? Because the scale of your production...
No, don't answer your own question.
Okay, no, I'm not answering the question, but like, talking about scale is key when we talk about hemp as well. So can you share us a little bit?
Thank you for that great question, because that was definitely something I didn't address. Scale, if we're, for example, talking about textile, I covered that in China, huge scale. We're talking about, you know, parts that would cover a whole country here in Europe that are just full of hemp fields that are being, you know, the raw material for the textile industry. But then also, for example, tiny projects in Switzerland. I documented the Alpenpionier, which is a cooperative of a couple of people who are coming together and reintroduced hemp to literally the food table in Switzerland by starting to regrow it. So the scale of projects I looked at was literally from a one person, you know, very enthusiastic about hemp and trying their best at getting that forward, to huge commercial industries that are absolutely settled, such as in China, Hemp Vortex. That's literally the company that exports most of the hemp textiles to Europe, to USA, So yeah, definitely a really important thing. And if we're talking about carbon sequestration, we'll definitely always return to the big companies, because the small scale, you know, we have to go circular, we have to team up. If that doesn't happen, which will make eventually the big scale, it's not going to happen that this can be used to mitigate the climate crisis.
Cool. Please, yeah, stand up in the microphone. Yeah, thank you.
Oui. This week I have also a session about the true pricing of food. What needs to be done? You also mentioned the Green Deal. It's also part of the taxonomy, if I'm right. What needs immediately to be changed for the level playing field? Also, he's mentioning between the current business cases and the new solutions.
So yes,
yeah,
Jasper.
So one of the things which isn't valued as good as it should be is the carbon storage you get from the hemp. If you would just take ETS or voluntary carbon credit prices, you can have like 1,500 euros more or less from 1 hectare of hemp, which is double the price probably. And I look at you, I think it's about double the price you now get for the crop added to that revenue. So if you would kind of have this ecosystem service as an extra payment somewhere in the industry, on one hand you can lower the cost of the output, making it competitive to the more mineral kinds of insulation or other building materials. You can give the farmer a good income to grow it, and when that is okay, you know, it's really easy to get the whole industry running and invested to process the whole thing. So I think that is the key to get industrial hemp to run. Cool. Then all the rest of the, I'd say it needs one carrier market which makes the money. I think if that's the carbon credit building sector market, that would be one of the kind of the drivers. And all the rest, you know, will also be developed.
Yeah. Marielle, did you want to?
Yeah, I would like to address. Yeah, that's why we're working on the carbon credits in the Netherlands with the Nationale Koolstofmarkt. That's actually the organization that runs it. And what we're focusing on really is partnering with the entire value chain, because what you see with a lot of things with carbon credits as well, somebody takes the profit, but it's not going back into the value chain. So I actually want to make sure that the producer, the farmer, that everybody takes profit from that carbon credit to make sure that it's actually better for the farmer, better for the producer, better for everyone in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, maybe you already discussed this question. Nevertheless, just ask a question. What was/is the influence of international legal status of hemp?
On Europe, or?
I don't know. They say, what is this? You know,
one of the things that's recently happened is the Czech Republic has moved to, instead of 0.3% of THC to 1%, right? So I would say that's a strong influence, and hopefully there'll be a ripple effect,
yeah.
You know.
Other members of panel, would you like to add something?
I think it's a bit of a difficult question, because obviously we're having a complete different development on the industrial hemp. Just to give the audience a little insight, if we're going over the pond to America, we see a lot happening in cannabis and marijuana and, you know, on the, let's say, leisure drug side, which is completely legal, but at the same time, there's still a lot of problems implementing and getting legality for the industrial hemp, which is completely flipped to the European side, where we have the industrial hemp being mostly legalized now. There's very few countries, such as Norway and a couple more, that still consider this to be completely a drug and completely illegal. But most have opened up and really seen that they need to embrace this plant, probably to move forward in their climate compatibility.
Okay. One more question, and I guess we can, okay, so over there, but one more question from the tablet. What happens with the plants which are used to clean the ground? These plants are polluted, right?
I suppose I'm going to have to give the answer, because that probably came because of what I said about South Africa and the nuclear program. Yeah. So what's happening there, it's a very complex process. I'm going to try to break this down to kind of children's language. The nuclear program has a liquidation process, which basically took the nuclear waste and made this neutral. Well, that's not a very scientific way to explain that. But when you grow the hemp in contaminated soil, then you do have to differentiate between the, is this nuclear radiation that the hemp took up? Because then you definitely do not want to use that for paper, for building, for anything. Yeah. It needs to be safely disposed of, and if you carry that hemp somewhere and then just bury it in the ground, you have done nothing for the soil because you're just cross-contaminating. So they're using this nuclear liquidation process to burn the hemp, which creates energy. So they're solving South Africa's energy crisis. It cleans the soils of these detrimentally polluted gold mines, creating basically new clean soils where food could potentially, in the far future, be grown again, which also means that they're not using the healthy soils where food needs to be grown for energy crops. So it's literally 3 different projects that are tackled. But yes, contaminated hemp, if it's heavily contaminated, cannot be used on anything afterwards.
Another question when you, for Marielle, when you mentioned that your rooftop is made of hemp, how does it smell, by the way?
It doesn't smell like,
doesn't it smell at all?
like cannabis that you can smoke,
no.
Because it's it's cannabis that you can't smoke, or cannabis sativa, you have to say.
Okay.
Yeah, so it smells great, and actually, if you work with it as a builder as well, it isn't itchy like other insulation materials. So it's healthier, it's breathing, it's everything. So I like it.
Yeah. But it doesn't smell as
no,
regular.
Not at all. No.
It's a shame. Okay. Okay. There is a question over there. Yeah. And by the way, on that note, please, June 7th, we will have a program here in Pakhuis de Zwijger with also members of parliament, leden van de Tweede Kamer, about how to use farming for building. Farming for building with members of parliament. What's your question and to whom?
Yes, for you. So
Maren?
we've seen, or I've seen how you've gone around Europe and North America, Russia, and I was wondering, and you talk about refugees as well and how the plant can help with food, housing, etc. And then you mentioned Haiti as well and the seismic part, and I remembered my country, Chile. And then I'm wondering, what about third world countries such as South America, Africa? Is there any industry, is there any contact in or projects in those countries?
Yep. Great question.
There's many, many projects. Just to shout out a couple, for example, Colombia changed from being, a marijuana producing country, and they basically switched that over to industrial hemp, trying to create something good out of something that actually brought them war. The South Africa project, the phytoremediation project that's happening in South Africa, you know what? It was COVID that simply got in the way. So I had a lot of ideas of going to Nepal, to go into Africa, to go into Latin America, and literally that got busted because I got stuck, like all of you. And maybe it was good because at least I finished the book. And the nice thing was that I actually got to connect to a lot of these projects online. There was a lot of talk with a lot more countries that are actually in the book. So cool. Yes, these projects are there.
Alicia, would you like to add
I just wanted to mention, since we've been working in Haiti, knowing full well the plant is still illegal there. They follow the guidelines of the US. But we have been speaking with people within the political structure, business, small business, large business, farmers, and doing trainings little by little over the past few years, maybe the last 4 years. Just this Saturday, I was invited to speak to a group of Haitian diaspora professionals. They said, we're ready to pull the trigger because we want to work with you in hemp. They had no understanding in the past. And now they have, the Japanese government are willing to do 10,000 homes, and they would like to do this with hemp. So we'll see how this moves forward. But that conversation was just Saturday morning.
Cool. Cool. Great news, great news. Just one more question about this burning stuff, you know. One more question, and because now we are 21:25, so we are going to finalize this session. But if you burn it, the radiation comes in the air, isn't it?
If you were to burn it just in a regular incinerator, that would definitely happen. But the nuclear program, actually, that liquidation process, I mean, I read about a 75-page research paper on that, so I can't repeat all of this. Okay. But it's not a regular incineration process, so nothing escapes. It's really a safe thing, and it's completely neutralized afterward.
Okay. On that note, so now we are going to finalize this evening. Just as I said in the beginning, don't forget we will have a book sale. And we will have a book signing, so it's a limited edition for tonight. So stay with us after this session. And the exhibition about the book is running until the end of this year, end of the next year, excuse me, in the Hash Marijuana Hemp Museum in Amsterdam. And thanks to the museum for hosting, of course, that exhibition. And if you want to, if you like this session, we have a lot of sessions. As I said, June 7th, don't forget that. Maybe you can become a member of Pakhuis de Zwijger. And if you have any money left, we don't care, any money left, pay as you like. Pay as you like. Having said that, thank you, all the members. And Mark, we will wave to you as well, via the Zoom. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you and the people at home for watching. And of course, the program editors, you saw one of them, Arno, with the microphone. The other one is over there, Robert. And our technicians to do all this stuff, with the videos and the Zoom and everything. On that note, I would say, go in peace. Thank you so much.